Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Monday night solar channel, Mattman solar channel talk. Tonight we have a awesome show planned. I tell you, I'd probably get more requests for this than anything that I have done. Well, maybe not. Maybe for $15 solar panels, a little bit more than this, but we've already taken care of that one. So we'll go off to sizing your solar system. And I kept thinking to myself, there has to be a better way to do this. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that if I could come up with a way to make it where you guys could follow along and understand the process. I didn't want, don't get me wrong, there's lots of really cool websites out there, but they all have all this excessive complexity to it that if you were going to look for an exact answer and you had, all these details and stuff, then sure, you might want to go through all those hoops and all that. But what I wanted to do was come up with a way to give you guys a way to look at the system and either do a light estimate or a deep dive into it, but understand the numbers behind it so that you're picking the reason why that system's sized that way, not some algorithm on some website just telling you what it is, and make you really understand what they are. So we have everything set up tonight for this. I've pulled a bunch of numbers from the house that I'm in. I didn't even realize I had so many numbers, but we'll talk about alternate ways to get those numbers. We'll go into determining peak loads so that you can figure out how to what you want to size for inverters and things like that. We'll talk about what the size of your solar array is going to need to be to match that, to get the energy that you think, the energy and the power out of it that you actually need, not what you think it's going to produce. And then we'll go into sizing a battery bank to make sure that you have a large enough buffer and that you can operate an autonomy of the sun coming up every day in case of bad weather, hurricanes, that kind of stuff. Like we have a lot of hurricanes here, so I always think about that. And then we'll go into some real world tip things I've learned, things that you can avoid. For example, one of those might be how you can use a generator to really trim off a large amount of expenses, but only use it very rarely. So we'll go into some of those tips. So I hope everyone's having a wonderful Monday and looking forward to spring starting here. What is today? The 16th. So that means we got 5 days till spring starts. And I tell you what, we have seen it in the sun. Have you guys been seeing it? Unfortunately, we have had rain here for days and days and days. But before the rain hit, I was producing more out of a bunch of junk used solar panels that I got used from the solar shed than I am on the $60,000 professionally installed solar system on the house. It's just crazy how these things can work. So I'm going to show you all how to do that. And today is going to be real hands-on, so I really encourage everyone to ask questions. If I gloss over something that you want to know the details to, please don't hesitate to ask. I am going to throw up on the screen a QR code for the, if I can find it, there it is. I think that's it anyway. Did that show up? Yes, it did. Okay, well, I didn't even, oh, there it is. It shows up on the bottom corner. Okay. The QR code is to my new list of all the equipment that I use to build the solar shed, to build my RV, to build basically everything. It also has a link at the very top that talks about today's episode and what we have there and any links that I have there. A couple of shortcuts to some basics that we went over in last week's live stream, which was all the different videos about batteries and inverters and that kind of stuff. And hopefully you got a good understanding there. If you didn't, don't worry about it. Links to all of those videos, scroll down in that page. And I probably can show you that page. Let's see if I can just get that to show up here for us. This will give me a good chance to make sure that my screens are all working. So this is what the page looks like. You can basically scroll down. You'll see information here about this week's live stream. There's a link to it if you want to send this over to somebody so that they can join us each week. I'll try to update this as we go into live stream, but we're going to go over calculating, everything for your own solar system today. Then I basically go into some of the most popular equipment that I deal with, that being the 6000 XP, the Life Power 4 batteries, some lead time batteries. Any coupon codes I have, I try to always put them in here. And open, just to be very open with you, most of this content in here, not all, but most of the content in here is affiliate links. This is how I pay for a lot of my equipment, or I get a lot of my equipment from. So if you see them, like you'll see there, the Refos loss, the lead time, or the Amazon, or even Signature Solar, all of them have coupon codes that you can use. Getting down into the different systems that I have, the RV system, the solar shed, the coffee trailer, the new portable station that I just put out, and all the parts list are here. I even go into, in some cases, I wanted to give you some alternatives for different inverters. If you wanted a bigger inverter, if you wanted a smaller battery, if you wanted to, move around a little bit. So I try to include some of those options, and I should label them like I did with the battery in the middle of this one. With the inverter, bigger inverter option 1 with 1000 watts, bigger inverter option 2 with 1500 watts. And I basically just label them with links for those. I go into some batteries I recommend, and then some inverters, and then way down here there's some tools, some components, and then way down here at the bottom is all of the phase 1 basic videos about batteries and solar panels and charge controllers and inverters. These are very, very basic beginner videos to give you a good root understanding of what each of those devices do. Following that, I do have, in phase 2, I do have 5 more videos coming out. One will be on-off switch, breakers and fuses, bus bars, shunts, wiring, and then after that, we'll probably go into phase 3, which will even get into more details. But and that's basically, I will keep this page completely up to date going forward, so all of the videos will point to it, and you can see the link up there from the scan. It's either mattmansolar.com/start, or you can just scan that code. It'll take you straight there, or down in the show notes, there's a link for it there. So enough about that. Let's get into talking a little bit about what we're going to do this week, and what I want to do and how I want to walk through it. I want to make sure that, see, I got over here. Yes, I do. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay and see everything all right. If someone could just confirm that the audio levels, they look great on my screen and on my monitor, but I just want to make sure that they sound good. Sometimes they sound differently than what they are. I got a cup of Joe, or a cup of coffee, and a Diet Mountain Dew this week. The Diet Mountain Dew is green, so it fits in. Normally I run blue screen, so tonight I actually had to change to green screen. So I had to change to blue, and you'll see like a little blue hue around me. I couldn't get the colors exactly right and still get all of the colors in the shirt to show up. So it's as close as I could get it, but I wanted to wear the green shirts tonight. So just because of St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Anyway, let's get into what we're here for today. Let's get into starting to look at a different look at the solar system. So the first piece that I want to get into specifically is going to be around sounds good from Jake. Thank you, Jake, and NSB clapping. I'm sure that means that everything sounds good from you too. Thank you so much. I will try to get the chat working here a little bit later, but I did run into a little bit of an issue right at the last minute, and I didn't bother fixing it because I figured tonight I'll be doing more talking than answering questions. So we do have a good long show tonight, but I want to get into it so that we don't take too much time. The first part is starting with real power usage. So I want to show you some real power usage from my house over the last few years. I put together a spreadsheet that basically contains all of the information. Let me see if I can get it on the right screen for you here real quick. There it is. All right. Well, I thought I had it on the right screen and then it disappeared. There it is. Okay. All right, so let me switch this over to the computer, and I'm going to zoom in on this piece here. Sorry, I'm used to the window. Oh, I see, it's a Mac. All I have to do is just zoom in. Well, that's so much easier. I switched to Mac back a few months ago, and I'm still kind of getting used to it. All right, so let's take a look at the actual stats that I have. If I do share screen this way, you can see the stat. Perfect. Okay, so this is a pair of stats by kilowatt hour of energy used that I pulled from a house monitoring system called Sense, S-E-N-S-E. It basically has a CT clamp on both the L1 and the L2, and it tracks everything. Now, recently, and you'll see a video come out about a new device that I've been working with, which you'll see on the links page that we just discussed a minute ago, and I believe it's under components down here. The Refloss, there it is, Refloss power monitoring system. And this device is very much like the Sense device, where the Sense device looks at the noise levels that are on your power, on your breaker box. This one actually has a CT clamp for every single breaker, or for 16 of the breakers within your panel, so you can monitor it a little bit closer. I connected one of these in that video, and you can see some of the statistics here, where it basically shows you the different power going on between them, and it shows you a breakdown of daily, weekly, monthly usage for them, and kind of gives you an idea of what it is. I'm going to show you what a device like this, or like the Sense device. Now, for my purposes today, all I really wanted to know was total power. Now, that may not apply to you, and I'll get into specific cases where it doesn't apply to you, because if you're going to build a solar system, the question is do you want it for an emergency purpose, or do you want it for your whole house all the time, day and night? Do you want it off-grid, or do you want it on-grid with grid as a backup power? Meaning, do you really have to power everything all the time yourself, being completely off-grid and not having backup power at all? Or did you want to just power most of your big loads, cover the cost of almost all of your electricity, but still have the grid there as an emergency backup for charging, or even backfeed to the grid to them? So we'll go over all of that as we walk through this. But let's start off with these statistics so that you kind of understand what I'm looking at here. Can you turn the music down? Absolutely I can. James, let me see here. Find the right switch for it here. There it is. Hopefully that's better. And I'll make it a little bit better for you. And it should cross all of my different screens with that volume now. I'm not even sure you can even hear it anymore, but if it's just lightly in the background, that's what I was going after. I played with some of these numbers earlier today, so it may have just gotten done. So that should take care of it, James. Thanks for pointing it out. All right. So these numbers, what's important about these numbers to note is that if you look at certain months, let's take January, for example. You'll notice that January, now I have highlighted a couple of different columns here that I want to point out, things that are exceptions that we need to take into account when we're playing with these numbers, so that you know I'm not just manipulating things to fit whatever scenario I want. In 2025, I grade this whole year out because the house was not occupied by me. As you all know, I was traveling in my RV that year, and I did not get back to the house until December. And even then, I wasn't fully involved with the home as much as I am now, living here all the time. So I kind of highlighted that as an exception month. And if you look at it, it kind of makes sense. I mean, every single month is down, like February is down to 1/7 of what a normal month is. So I highlighted it that way, and I took it out of the numbers on the far right. Also, you'll notice there are 3 yellow months in the year of 2024. In 2024, my wife picked up some big contracts for big shows that we go to where we spend multiple weeks out of the house. And you can see how dramatic of an impact it has on the power, because when I leave, I obviously would shut down a lot of things and cause those to be low. So those are not valid as far as they're valid for what I need for a year ongoing, but they're not valid to determine what is the maximum that I need. So we're trying to determine right now, the first thing you want to know is you really want to understand what is your usage. What are your total kilowatt hours per month? What are your high months? What are your low months? And then we're going to get into the second thing that you need to know is what is that peak? Now there's some big things that we need to understand about the peak, but we'll get into those here in a minute. But first, and we'll get into why they're important. But first, we really want to try to come up with a way, and I'm going to walk you through my thinking. There's a half a dozen ways you can do this. I look at this chart and I see a few things of, wow, my energy efficiency has gotten better for some months and worse for others. For example, in February and in April and May, if you look at, well, no, not really. Excuse me, in June and July, during the summer months, you can tell my air conditioner has gotten a lot more efficient. And some of that was as I switched to some portable mini splits in certain rooms that I used the air conditioner overnight and stuff like that so that I could turn the main unit off. And as you can see, in June and July, it went from 1900 and 1700 in usage down to 1200. And you can see that was that's pretty consistent. Now, that said, the big thing here is to understand where are your big months and where are your little months, and then how is that affected by sun. And we'll get into sun effects later, but let's understand what we're talking about first. It looks like if you come down here to the bottom, I have a total by year. And I've got about 18 megawatts in 2019, 18.9 megawatts or 19 megawatts in 2020, 19.6, 17, 15, 13. And you can see that my usage has gone down pretty much every year a little bit and a little bit more as more and more efficient devices and as I've identified more and more problematic items. I know back in 2022, 2023, a big drop here was that I found that I had a well pump that was running constantly because it had a small leak in it. And once I fixed that, it saved me a ton of probably 2 to 3 kilowatts a day of power there. So things like that are what monitors like this get you. Now, the Sensi monitor uses noise distortion on the line to determine what devices are, and when something comes on, it says it thinks this device is running, and it's kind of a guessing game. When a light's on and it makes a certain noise, it kind of guesses it. It takes a long time to learn. It took months and months and months to learn what different devices were, and when new ones come online, it just shows them as a big pool of other devices being ran. Once you have it on for a while, things like your hot water heater and your microwave and those kind of things, they do show up, and it is fairly accurate. Whereas the refloss is very accurate because it's actually looking at a circuit. Now, it doesn't allow me to see the difference between a light and a microwave plugged into the same circuit, but it does allow me to see the actual circuit itself and determine the usage. You can also easily get an idea of what these are depending on how big of a system. If you're looking for a house system, then you can use your electric bill to get this exact same information. Go out to the electric company, you can download each of your bills, you can pull the numbers up just like this, and you can plop them into a spreadsheet just like I've done here. As you can see, for the most part, we're working on averages. You're not going to be able to get an exact number of how much electricity am I going to use in next month. Let's say I wanted to know how much electricity I'm going to use in March. If I wanted to know how much electricity I'm going to use in March, I could probably safely say it's going to be somewhere between 1,000 and 1,300 kilowatt hours, but that's about all I'm going to be able to do. There's a pretty big difference between 1,000 and 1,300. That's a 30% difference. So don't look to be so precise in your guesstimates of this. Look for safety margins that make you happy. And I'll give you a few catch-alls as we go through this on things that that should scare you about them. So what I did is I took the averages and threw them in over here and said, okay, let's just take the average of each of these months. These are my hurricane season, misspelled hurricane season at that. And it looks like I use about 17,181 kilowatt hours a year, or 17.1 megawatt hours. And then you can see the average here for months. So my highest month looks like it's July, and I have 1,727 kilowatt hours of power that I use in that month. And it does have some fluctuation. If I wanted to go with my highest month altogether, I could actually pull up the max number here and say, give me the highest month that I have out here total, and I have 2,071. So that would be my max usage in a month. And if I said, what is my max per day? It would be that divided by 30. So average, I could max out use about 70 kilowatt hours a day. And if I built a system based on that, and I actually was able to generate 70 kilowatt hours a day every day, then I know I would have 100% coverage. I would also have 100% of, not 100%, I'd have a lot of waste, because that would be overkill for most months. Because then if we turn around and take them in, eliminating the months that we know are not valid for minimum, we'll just grab these months over here. If I take them in, it's 1,041, which comes out to, and I'm using 30, an average low month is about 34. So that means that I use, on average, on my low months, 34 kilowatt hours, on my high months, 69 kilowatt hours. That should give you, or me, or anyone, a really good idea of what it's going to take to generate enough power to power your home. So if I generate 35 kilowatt hours a day, then I'm going to show up short on days when I need more. If I generate 70 kilowatt hours a day, then I'm going to have too much, and it's going to be overkill for those many months here that I have overall. If I take the average of the year, and I just take this and divide it by 365, it's 47. So as you can see, this is a numbers game. And the question is how do you put the numbers together to get a good estimate of what you need? So let's back this up. Let's take this to the next step and figure out what that means and how I would do that. If I can get this zoom to work here. Whoops, there it went. Just went too far. And then I'll move the screen over this way. Forgive my Mac screen uses. I'm using 2 fingers on my mouse pad because I don't do it very often. Okay. So I put in 1,432 average kilowatt hours a day. Yeah, you're right. Let me just go. How did I get season in there twice? All right, fix that for you guys. I can't stand that being there the whole time I do the show incorrectly. So here I put in 1,432 kilowatt hours per month. Now, where that number came from is I took the average of L22 to L33 and basically the average of these, and I basically dumped it into this column here, 1,432. Now what I'm trying to do is come up with if I had a solar system that could generate the average amount, that would mean that during the peak months I'm going to be a little short, and during the minimum months I'm going to be a little over, and hopefully they're all zero. Now in Florida, the feedback rules, and here I don't have batteries. In the system I have on the house is built based on giving power to the grid and then getting power back from the grid. But I am going to estimate a system that uses batteries instead, because I think batteries is a much better deal. In a lot of parts of the country, you give power to the company, you don't get the same rate as it costs for you to get it back. In other words, if I get a kilowatt hour from the electric company, I pay 15 cents. But if I give a kilowatt hour to the electric company, they only credit me 10 cents. Now, I'm very fortunate here in Florida that if I give one, they put it in a bucket and later on I can get one. And it is a 1-to-1 ratio, but that is very rare. So in most parts of the country, you're going to get a fraction between 60 and 30% of what you actually would pay for one is the credit they give you. Meaning that that's the equivalent in my mind, and we're going to talk about losses to store power and convert power a little bit later. But keep in mind that if the electric company is giving you 5 cents for something they charge you for 15 cents, that's a 66% loss. If they're giving you 10 cents for something they charge you 15 cents, that's a 30% loss. So let's keep that in mind when we get to the next phase when we're working on how big of a battery bank that you need, because then losses become significant there of what does it cost to store it, and then what does it cost to take it out and convert it back to AC power for your circuits and stuff. But let's start here with 1,432 kilowatt hours. Now, a lot of people will take this, and I will actually do it this way too. Instead of using our average, they will do the minimum one and do all the calculations, and then they'll do the maximum one. There are a lot of websites. If you are interested in a website to do some of these calculations, we're going to go through PVWatts here in a few minutes. It has some really nice functionality. It's a government subsidized website that gives you some of the calculations you need. I use it for what's called sun hour calculations, which basically tells you how many hours a day in your area you can count on getting the equivalent of full solar power from your panels. Meaning that if you have 1,000 watts of solar panels, you have 1 kilowatt of solar panels, and you in Florida, in my area, I get 5.5 solar hours. That would mean that I would get I'd get 1 kilowatt for 5.5 hours. I would get 5.5 kilowatt hours of power a day for 1,000 watts of panels. You can basically look up any area. I will take you to the website and show you how to use it. It has some really cool features of putting in number of panels, putting in the angles, changing, some loss figures and stuff like that. I'll show you how to use some of that. It does a lot of the basic math for you if you're interested in that, but I'm walking you through the actual scenarios that I run in my head when I'm looking at a system like this. Got to drink my coffee before it gets cold. Okay, so with 1,432, now we're going to go back and do this again with the minimum, and we're going to do it again with the max, but we're going to start with the average for now to get an idea in the middle of the road. So what this is basically saying is that if I have 1,432 kilowatt hours of average usage per month, that I do 48 kilowatts an hour. Now we did the math down here doing it with a different formula. We took the total of the kilowatts for the whole year and divided it by 365, and we came up within 1 kilowatt hour of the same number. So that's gives me good confidence that we're at least working with the right numbers. Okay, now I went to PV, this is the website, and you'll probably want to take note of this, and I don't know that I put it on the show link page, but if I didn't, I will after the show is over. But let me take you over here to this page. There it goes. And this is basically a really cool little website where you can go in and you can put in any location pretty much anywhere, and it will give you some detailed information about your PV hours that you're going to get, your solar, quote, solar hours that you can have. I'm going to pick my zip code here I was playing around in some of the ones in Texas where I used to live. I'm at 32909 here in Florida. And if you click on it, it's going to tell you approximately where it is, what the longitude and latitude is, give you some really good information to make sure that you're in the right spot. You can even scroll down a little bit. It gives you a map of the approximate area on the map. And if you zoom that out, you can get a better idea of where that is pertaining to your city or state or whatever it is. Now, if you hit go to the next, this will take you to some sizing information. And the sizing information isn't really what's important to me on this site. I'm going to walk you through it, but what's really important to me is the next page. If you had a solar system, for example, the solar system that is on my house that was professionally installed that does not have battery system, it is strictly grid powered, is a 13.68 kilowatt system. There's 13,680 watts of solar panels on the roof. Now, the problem with this calculation and what's really up there is there's some panels on the source side, there's some panels on the south side, there's some panels on the east side, and there's some panels on the west side. So in order to really cue this in, you would have to add a bunch of additional parameters and configure each one of them and do it. I don't usually do that unless I'm really sizing something for someone that's looking for exact real answers here. If you're looking to get an idea, this is where you want. The type of panels they are they thin film, standard, or premium panels? I usually pick standard unless they truly are thin film. If they are premium panels, meaning the very high efficiency ones, then you can do that and it'll take a little bit more into account the losses and the difference in how they perform. Then you have what kind of mounting system or array type is it? Is it fixed on an open rack? Is it fixed on a roof? Is it fixed on one of those axis tracking or backtracking or dual axis tracking systems? Now, there are some discussion about the first two options on here that you need to know, and the answer is, why does this matter? Because a lot of the times, if you're, depending on where you're at, if it's very hot weather or very cold weather, you can understand that the fixed on a roof could have a significant difference from in a rack mount out in the exposed in the open air, or up off the ground where they can breathe and they can get more air, because then they're going to be more efficient. So this does take a little of that into account. So it's something that you're going to want to, It's something that you're going to want to take into account when you're putting it in here. This one is roof mounted, so I'm going to change it to roof mounted. And then this is a very interesting question that I want everyone to understand the significance of this. And this talks about system losses. And system losses come in forms of multiple ways. A lot of people think that they get a solar panel and they're just going to build a solar system with 1,000 watts, which is 1 kilowatt, and they need 5 kilowatts a day, and they've got 5.5 hours of kilowatt sun hours a day. Therefore, they're going to be fine. What they don't take into account is all that electronic equipment don't run for free. And what I mean by for free is it is using solar power to operate the inverter. It is using solar power to operate the charge controller. It is using solar power to operate all of these devices and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to and turning on when they're supposed to and turning off when they're supposed to. And this is what this system losses thing is. In other words, you're going to have a loss for taking DC power and converting it to AC power. Standard losses, it's usually somewhere around 7 or 8% depending upon your inverter. Most inverters will tell you what their efficiency rating is. If you want to get into the details of exactly what the losses should be. You'll also have a loss for taking power and converting it and storing it into a battery, for extracting it from a battery, and then taking the DC power and converting it to AC power. So all of these things have losses and they have cost to operating. And that's where this number becomes very significant. In this case, it's talking about a 14% loss, which is a pretty standard loss depending on your system and how big your system is. But it even has a little loss calculator here, which I didn't recognize before, but it allows you to go in and talk about the different types of losses that you might have. It has a shading percentage loss. It has a soiling percentage loss. Now, what it means by soiling, are you in an area that has a lot of trees that gets you to, I get that little green, it's not soot, but the green pollen from some of the trees around here every year. So I lose some to that. Mismatch in solar panels. This is basically where you may have 10, 20, 30, like in this house, I have 31 415 watt panels, but there's a little bit of mismatch in those. And that mismatch is going to cause some percentage loss. Wiring loss, if you have a voltage drop in your wiring, you're going to lose some to that. Connections loss, all of your connections may be perfect when you buy the system, but at some point they're going to start to degrade, and what do you want to account for that? Light-inducing degradation. Light-induced degradation, and I'm not sure exactly what that one is. Nameplate rating percentage loss. You can see on your nameplate that it says plus or minus, 0.3, 0.4, 1 point, 1.2, whatever, you can put that in there. Age degradation. If they were used panels, you might come in here and say, hey, look, I tested these and they have a 7% loss. Availability, meaning that some of the panels in your setup, you may have a string here and a string there, and one string is on a bad section of the house, or one's, like in my case, I have some on the east side, some on the west side, some on the north side. I could go in and calculate what all those losses are and put them in here. So you can build in a loss chart. If you want a good sound number to work with and you don't want to go through figuring out all of this gobbledygook, around 16% to 17% I found to be a pretty good number to work with the exception of battery storage, and we'll get into the battery storage and the losses there. But if you're going to talk about everything coming from solar directly into your batteries and everything coming out of your batteries and then being used, then you're going to want to bump that up some extra to accommodate the DC power being stored in the battery. There's a bit of small loss there, and then there's another loss when it's pulled out of the battery. It ends up being another 7 or 8% losses. So where you might be having 16 or 17%, you may be as high as 24% if you're operating totally 100% battery. Very few of you are going to have a solar system of such significant size that you store all your power during the day and you don't use any of it, because those losses don't exist if, for example, you're running an air conditioner during the day and your power is generated and it's immediately consumed. Well, if it's immediately consumed, it was never stored in the battery, and therefore you don't have to pay what I call the tax to store it in your batteries. So using a safe number usually is between 14 and 16. This, I would say, is a little bit generous. You could probably get it down to 14 depending on the size of the system, but my guess is that this would probably be a little bit higher and probably be closer to probably closer to 16 to somewhere in that area, somewhere in that would be a good safe range. Tilt, they're talking about here are the panels, what is the tilt for your particular area? Now keep in mind, this system asks you your exact location, meaning it has your longitude and latitude, and this makes a huge impact on whether those panels are getting full sunlight and whether they're going to have full impact of sunlight. If you change these to vertical panels instead of 20%, now let's do this out of fun. This is saying which direction they're facing, which is due south, and this is saying that they're facing at a 20-degree angle. Now, if I go to the next page, this is going to give me a calculation that I can generate 20.4 megawatt hours last year. Now, if I go back and change this to these are all vertical panels, and they're at a 90 degrees angle instead of the 20-degree angle, you'll see here that I lose a significant amount of power because it knows, based on my longitude and latitude, where those panels would be. Now, if it is a rack as opposed to a roof, and you want it to adjust that percentage, you could come in and say, okay, well, I want to put it at 23 degrees because I know my rack will do it, and I get 20.4. And what if I go to 17 degrees, and there I get 20.2. So you can move this percentage around a little bit to get the maximum amount. Now, 20 degrees is a pretty good standard number, and to be honest with you, you're not going to see a whole lot of difference in these numbers unless you have a dramatic change from 20% to 40% to 45%, unless you have some goofy roofs that, you know, there's some low pitch roofs of 11%, there's some high pitch roofs of 45%, or even some 60% roofs. So if you've got one of those, you want to put that in and you want to pay special attention to it. I honestly, I don't pay too much attention to a lot of these numbers. They're here if you want to use them. What I like about this website, now that we've gone through all of this, is I scroll down here and it tells me the sun hours that I'm going to get out of this. Now, that's what I find is important. And you'll notice back from my solar sheet here, I said I had 5.5 solar hours in my area. If I was in a different part of the country, and let's say that I was in, let's say I was in Texas, I could go back up here and say, okay, give me 75080, which is the North Dallas area, Richardson, I believe, and pick the same things, and I get 5.3 hours. Whereas if I go pick something in Arizona, I may end up with 7 or 8 hours. So depending upon where your, I would like to have a zip code somewhere up north, which would be really good. If someone online has a zip code up north, please let me know. I'd love to put that in and get an idea of where one that has significantly lower thing. But you can see here, this also estimates by month. So you can go in and say, look, during July, I'm going to get 6.5 solar hours. And during January, I'm going to get 4.04 and 4.06 in December. So we immediately can look at this and say December and January are going to be very, very low and significantly close to the same. And if I go look at my usage, if I look at my usage for January, it's 1,093 or 1,078. Ironically, they are also very identical. So that would be where you could build your smallest system, is you need this amount of power during this time of year based on those number of hours. And we could say, let's say that we're looking at 1,100. So we need 1,100. And we know that it's going to be, whoops, that's Texas. Let's switch this to 32909, back to Florida here. And we're going to get the smallest month is 4.24. So December is significantly smaller than January here. So 4.24. So we'll put that in here as 4.24. This spreadsheet is nothing more than a couple of formulas. I take the average monthly kilowatts here, and here I divide it by 30. Nothing special. Here I'm taking the number right off of the website, keying it in, nothing special there. So now I am going to calculate the ideal sizes, no losses taken into account. How big of a solar system do I need to generate 1,100 watts in December, I guess is what it ended up being. Don't want that. I want this. In December, yep. And then, why am I having problems with that? Let's see if I can get this to, there we go. And so here I'm saying, if I take J10 through J13, which is J10 through J13, and divide it by J13, which means if I need 37 kilowatt hours a day, and I generate 4.24 per hour of sunlight, then I need 8.65 kilowatts of solar panels on the roof to generate that amount of power given perfect circumstances. Now let's talk perfect circumstances. That means rain don't count, snow don't count, cloudy days don't count, losses don't count, conversions don't count, nothing counts. That means that every day I get exactly 4.24, and that means every panel is facing perfectly in exactly the right angle. Then I calculate a second one based on an 18% loss. Now, I said earlier 16, 17. So I'm going to take a little bit of a buffer here, and I'm going to say based on an 18% loss, how much would I need? Now I need 10.55 kilowatt hours to accommodate all of the losses from the power comes in from the solar panels and the inverter is turned on, and therefore it has to run the inverter. If it has to convert it for the charge controller or whatever losses are going to be from operating the equipment, now I need 10.55 kilowatt hours. Now, what I still haven't done is accounted for rainy days, snow days, hurricanes, and stuff like that. And I'm going to give you a complete, we're going to talk a little bit about autonomy a little bit later, and it'll give you an idea of how we're going to use that number to manage what I call autonomy. And autonomy basically means that how long can you operate your solar system without the assistance of the sun? How long can you independently, without outside interference, go on about life? 1 day of autonomy means for 24 hours. If there was no sun, you'd be fine. 2 days of autonomy means for 2 days, you would be able to run everything the way you want, perfectly fine. 3 day means 3 days. 4 days, you get the point. So how much autonomy do you want in your solar system, and what do you feel? And we can give you some best case scenarios there also. Talk about that. Okay, so we know now that we need 10.5 for the largest day, and I'm going to just put that right here, 10.55 kilowatt hours for min month and min month, okay? And then I'm going to do just the opposite and twist this on its head and say, okay, now what about the best month of the year? What do I need for the most power? What is my highest consumption power? And I'm hoping that my highest consumption power is also my highest production month, and it allows me to get away with a little bit of a fudge factor here. The only twist to this could be is if there's, and it doesn't happen it doesn't happen, is that if the lowest production month was your highest, what do you call it? Well, you know what I did too? Was your lowest income. So let me say here, I used January. So I did. I got an average of 5.5 hours for the year per day, but in December, I only get 4.2. Now, let's talk about the month that I used the most power, and let's use its numbers and do this worksheet all over again to come up with what's the largest system I need to power the largest month. And maybe it'll be smaller because I have more sun and it produces more, and maybe it'll be less. It depends on where you live, and I've seen it flow both ways. So let's take the largest month that we have, which was 2071, and we're going to do 2100, let's say. Yep. And that's 70 kilowatt hours a day, which is a lot. And we know that, we need to know which month that came from. So let's come back down here and hunt it down. There's some, there, right there. It's September. Is that true for every month? 19, looks like July is my largest month. I think that's safe to say. We'll look at, there seems to be a block right here in the middle that are all high, and they kind of move around to which one's the highest. So let's take the highest of June, July, August, and September, or the lowest production of those 3 months. And we have June, July, August, and September, and the lowest production is 3.39. Everything else is close to 6. We've even got clearly some 6s up here, but it's still cool enough in the year that those aren't going to count because the production, the usage isn't as high. So 3.39 looks like it's the safe bet here. So now we're going to take that 3.39 and put it in here. And in order to provide the amount of power to operate this system every day during this month, I would need 25.18 kilowatt hours for the max month. Now, that's a lot. And that is a lot of solar panels, and it is very, very difficult to do that. And this is why a lot of people like grid tied systems, because in the case of that, during these months when you have excessive usage or excessive generation, and if you remember from this chart over here, where you have these 6, it's pushing that power to the grid. And then when you get to these months here where you're not generating enough, it's able to pull that power back from the grid. Now, building a system like this, and this is where things start to get a little tricky. So now we know that the system needs to be somewhere between 10.5 and 25.18. Now, the operating, and we'll have to figure out where in there we want to generate that. Most people don't have room for 25 kilowatts of power on the roof. I've got 31 panels on my roof, and I've got 13.5 kilowatt hours on my roof, and I can zero my electric bill, but I also use the electric grid as a battery year round. I put power into that battery, and then when these slow months roll around, or December when I don't have hardly any generation and I have a lot of power, or I have a lot of needs, then I can take back some of that at equal. And most people, this is why off-grid is extremely difficult, because as you can see, to operate in a normal environment, you need hardly any power, 10.5 kilowatt hours. To operate in the high usage environment, you're going to need 25 kilowatt hours, which is tremendously more than the other one. Now, that is average based on the numbers that we had here. Now, you can see that over the years, I reduced that usage on those months dramatically. And I did that through things like figuring out what was costing me the most amount of money. My air conditioner, did I put an attic fan in that reduced my cooling cost? Is there a way I can reduce my heating cost and use some other technologies there or whatnot? Turn on ceiling fans, change the thermostat a little bit. This is where you hear solar people talk about what are those usages, and that's where you start looking at things like this chart that I had over here from my section here. Hold on, Jake, I'll get back to your question here in just a second. Let me finish this thought. So this here allows me to pay very close attention to what is my AC unit using, what is my den back wall using, what is my dryer using, what is my overall dryer usage using, what is the water pump or the water heater use, those type of things, and see if you can find ways to make efficiency changes. I obviously have done that and found some ways to reduce that dramatically. So now if we take some of these high months that I have here, and I just look at this last legitimate, or the last legitimate high month, I could easily say Max here for this year is 1697, which is July. We come back over here to July, and it's 595 and 1697, 1697 and 595, and now I've reduced my system to where a 11.59 kilowatt system can actually power my entire system. And this is why efficiency is very, very important to understand. Little changes like that, the difference in a few kilowatts here and a few kilowatts there, can make a huge difference. Now, let me see what Jake was saying here. I had to put a comment in there because there was an icon over top of it so that I could actually read it. I think you mean 5.39 kilowatts from sun hours in September. That should, oh, yes, you're right. I had 3, didn't I? I thought there was something wrong with that math. Let's go back and look at that one more time real quick. Good catch. 5.39. Whew. I thought that was a little high. Thinking, wow, that's really high. 5.39, and I had 2100, right? There we go. That's much better. 15.84. And then with the efficiency changes, I got that down to 13 kilowatt hours. So you can see that safely, if I have a 16 kilowatt system, I'll be fine. I will all been during the summer months and in the winter months. Now, here's the trick. You are going to generate that power in 5 hours and 5 hours of the sunny part of the day, not necessarily 5 hours. Of course, the sun's going to come up and you're going to generate it over the entire day. But you're not going to be able to use it all as you generate it. You're going to want some of it for the next morning when the sun, the sun hasn't been up for very long and you want to make coffee. You're going to want some of it to get the kids a bath at 8 o'clock at night when the sun's gone down. You're going to want some of it to watch TV at 11 o'clock at night. You're going to want some of it to run the air conditioner overnight. You're going to want to use that power when you want to use it, not necessarily when you can use it. So here's where batteries come in. And so now we know that we need to build a system of approximately, I'm going to say, somewhere between 10.5 and 15.8. Now, my best guess on this would probably be, if I wanted to play it safe on those high usage months, I would shoot for 15 or 16 kilowatt hours of panels. And if I couldn't get 15 to 16 kilowatt panels, I would get as many as I can. Now, if I am grid fed like I am here, then it's not absolutely necessary to cover all of your usage, because the slice that you're not going to be able to cover is going to be very, very small. And there's ways to work around those very small areas that are much less expensive than putting in a whole bunch of more panels or putting in a whole bunch of more battery, and possibly even battery can be the answer also. So let's talk about some of those. And let's say that knowing that I've seen certain efficiencies that people do to make big differences in these. For example, instead of doing your laundry at 8 o'clock at night after the kids go to bed, they do the laundry in the middle of the day. Therefore, the sun is out, they don't have to store the energy anymore, and they don't have to pay the tax on storing the energy. You generate this amount of energy, you lose a little bit to convert it into AC power to run your washer and your dryer, and you're done. Same thing's true with your washing your dishes. Instead of washing your dishes after you eat dinner and you turn the machine on, you leave them in the dishwasher the next morning after the sun comes up, the kids go to school, it's lunchtime, you hit start. Shifting some of your things like that can make a huge difference in how much battery system you have. Some people don't want to change. My wife is one of them. Hey, I don't have a problem with that. We build a bigger system, we build a better system to accommodate the lifestyle. And if you're willing to change your lifestyle, you can change and make a huge difference and impact on how much you're going to have to spend on the rest of your system. So for now, we're going to say that we're going to need 15.8 kilowatt hours. And if we were to do 15.8 kilowatts, and we'll say we were putting in 450 watt panels, then we know we need to put in 35 panels, and that's the end of that. And we can move on 35, 36 panels. And if we put in 31, we'll say was a pallet, 31 times 450, you'd be looking at 13.95 kilowatts of power on a pallet of panels if they had 31 in that pallet. Some of the pallets are 31, some are 32. It all comes down to size and how they fit on the pallet and how big they are and all that kind of stuff. Now they've got some even bigger panels now that are 650 watt panels. And if you were using 650 or 600 watt panels, whoa, those are really huge panels. You only need a few of them. If you were using 600 watt panels, then all you would need is 26 of them, and a pallet of those is probably around 28 panels or so. So you'd have more than enough with one pallet. So this is how you size how much solar you need. Now you have to consider, can you make it fit? Do you have enough roof space? Are you putting it in a ground mount system outside? Are you doing a combination of the two? But at least you know what you need to do here. Now, let's do the next big important piece that you have to deal with when you're sizing a system is what we call peak load. Now, peak load is really going to be determining how big your inverter needs to be to handle your peak load. So for example, if you run 1,000 watts all day long, you're going to have 24,000 watts or 24 kilowatts that you need for an average day to operate. Pretty standard. We just determined that we were running 70 on our max, 30 on our max. So let's say we were running 1,500 watts all day long. So you'd need an inverter that was 1,500 watts, and voila, you could have a 36 kilowatt hour inverter running 1,500 watts. The reality is it doesn't work like that. The reality is that you have some devices like your air conditioner. If we go over here to my page here for this, you can see my AC unit's not on right now, but you can see that if it was on, it's running up in the 2,500, 2,200 range. So 1,500 watt inverter wouldn't work. And even if I had a 2,259 watt inverter running, then I wouldn't be able to run anything else. What if I wanted to run a hot water heater? Let's go down here to the hot water heater. That's 4,600 watts all by itself. Now, if the hot water heater and the AC unit come on together, now we're talking 7,000 watts. And so what you need to figure out is what is that peak load so that you understand how big the inverter needs to be. Now, the easiest way to do that, and I would use the combination of these two together, and I don't have one where they're added up together, I don't think. But we can look at how we would do it if we did. So the peak on this one is 5,200 watts power there. And then the peak on L2 is another 4,800. So 52 and 48 is 910. So that's 10,000 watts. Now that means that I am going to need, in order to run everything that is the way it's run right now, I would need 10,000 watts with some spare room for surges. In other words, if a refrigerator kicks on and it uses 100 watts, it may take 1,000 to start it. So I would say that safely I could operate on a 12,000 watt inverter. Let's say the EG4 12,000 XP or the PV18K. Both of those have approximately 12,000 watts. And the nice thing is during the day, they have a little bit of extra surge when they have PV to go into them. So instead of just 12,000 watts, we may be able to get 14,000 watts out of them. Now, that, and just so we all know, and I'm going to stop and do a little bit of a sales on you here, is the 12,000 XP just happens to be one of the units that Signature Solar discounted deeply in the last week or so that I saw. And I'm going to go out to our little, where is it? Oh, I hit it from this link. So if you go down here to the inverters, they've got special discount on this right now. So it was marked down from in the $2,500 range down to $1,899. So this is a very reliable, and I love their 6,000 XPs, but this one is a 12,000 inverter. But you can get up with PV, you can get up to 15,000 watts of power from it. So this would actually accommodate perfectly what this house would need to operate based on all the information that we have now. Now, if I had gone in there and seen that it was, sitting under, 6,000 watts or something like that, you could pick a smaller inverter, or if we needed more power, then we could also pick a larger inverter. And that may be either the 6,000 XP if I needed 6,000 watts, or I could go with something like a pair of 12,000 XPs and I get up to 24,000 watts. So a lot of this is going to depend on how big of a system that you need. And based on what we've done here, we need a 12,000 XP to run the entire house in an off-grid situation. Now, off-grid in this case means that it's going to run totally off of battery, and it will use the grid only as backup power or charging power, or I can tell it to flip-flop and run completely off the grid or completely off a battery. There is no in between. If we wanted a hybrid system that would allow me to share power with the grid, then we might want to go with one of the grid boss or the flex boss or something like that. Okay, so now we've determined the peak load, which really has told us the inverter that we need. So now we know that we need, on the solar panels, we needed 15 kilowatts of solar panels, and we know that we need a 12,000 watt inverter. So 12,000 watt inverter and 15.8 kilowatt hours of panels. So these are really the specs that we're looking at now. Now we need to understand what kind of battery would we want to battery bank to handle this. Now, this one is much more subject to your opinion and where you feel safe than you would like to believe. I'll tell you my opinions, and then you can decide for yourself. So if I know that I am going to need to store 70 kilowatt hours, the amount of autonomy means that if I have bad weather, if I have a hurricane, if there is no sun, I know that I am going to need, some people say, if you're peak shaving, meaning you're just getting rid of some of your bill, you may only want 1 day of autonomy, and that allows you for the most of the time to get away with it. If you're protection against a hurricane, like I am, then I'm going to want 3 to 5 days of total autonomy, allowing me that if a hurricane hits and the power goes out, I have to operate completely off grid. And there's not going to be any sun because it's a damn hurricane. There's no sun. And how long do I want the system to operate? And I would say that I found that the sweet spot is right around 3 days. Now, in emergency circumstances, when the whole world is really sour, 3 days will feel like heaven. 5 days is supposed to be 5 to 7 days is where a lot of the big experts will say are the ideal days of autonomy. Now, days of autonomy means You can operate everything the way it is for that number of days if there was no sun. It does not mean that you can operate for those days in partial sun or some cutbacks. And so my thought is, if I have 3 days of autonomy and I cut off big things like, instead of having the hot water heater on 24/7, and if we go over and we look at the hot water heater, I could say, okay, well, let's take a look at the hot water heater. It runs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. What if I, during a hurricane, shut the hot water heater off? It's a big giant hot water heater tank that's full of hot water, and I know, based on trying it, that, to be honest with you, you're going to have warm water in that hot water tank for about 15 to 18 hours, depending on how much you're using it. So what if I only turned it on once a day? Just enough to, if we needed to take a shower or wash dishes or whatever we wanted to do, we could. And then I turned it off the rest of the day. Then maybe I would just have one of these blocks here, and maybe I could turn this giant hot water heater that we see down here from 7 kilowatt hours a day to 7 kilowatt hours every 3 or 4 days. Now the autonomy of my system is expanded because it's that much less that I'm using in those cases. So it comes down to essential loads extend your autonomy. Efficiency extends your autonomy. And sun, any sun that you get will extend your autonomy. So now the question becomes is, how much sun can you really count on even on bad days? And usually you can count on between 10 and 30% even on the worst sun days that there are outside. So if you're getting 10%, that means that if you have 5 days of autonomy, you're going to get an extra 50% of a day just on the worst case scenario of sun. So you'll have 5.5 days of autonomy. If you cut off a part of your usage from not running your hot water heater, or you decide, you know what, I really don't want to run the air conditioner except for a couple of hours every night while I sleep, how much money could you save on that? Or not money, how much power can you save on that? This is where operating in the extreme becomes different than operating when, oh, there was a simple power outage because a guy hit a telephone pole and the power was down for 4 hours. Well, if the power is down for 4 hours for a telephone pole, you're going to operate in your normal capacity. So having a day or two of autonomy completely covers what you need and no more problems. So this is where the size of the battery bank is really going to become very significant. So let's look back at the numbers and determine how big of a bank do we need. Well, we know we need 70 kilowatts a day, and if we're going to do 3 days of autonomy, then that means that I need 210 kilowatt hours of battery bank power to operate my house for 3 full days on the worst day of the month, on the absolute worst. Now we know the best day of the month is 34. That means that on the best day of the month, it'd be 34 times 3. I only need 102 kilowatt hours. So somewhere between 102 and 210. Now, I would suggest that in this case, if it was me, I would go in and say, okay, how much can I save on that hot water heater? How much can I save on that air conditioner? What if I turned off the big AC unit and we only ran a window unit or a mini split at night when we wanted to sleep, or only air conditioned one room during the day during a hurricane in order to maintain our sanity and to keep our perishables not perished? That would be the question I would ask there. And my suspicion is that comes into about, and this is a rough guess on my part, and I don't have any data to back it up today, but that I found that it's pretty close to accurate. It's about 50%. You use about 50% in a really bad scenario than you would use in a full usage scenario. That means that I could get away with 105 kilowatts for 3 days. I could get away with, in the good time of the month, 102. Now, the reason it was important to highlight that hurricane months before is, what are these months? What is the bad part of these months and where do they fall? and they are all in the really high usage months. So I really do need to focus on that 70 kilowatts a day. And if I'm talking about half of it, that's 35. And 35 means that I need 105 kilowatts to operate for 3 days of autonomy with maximum extending ability turned on. In other words, I turn off the hot water heater when I'm not even, maybe I don't even use hot water heater, but for every couple of days. I turn off the air conditioner, and maybe I only use it for, you know, sleeping at night, and maybe in a small window unit in one room, or things like that. So that's what I'm saying. In maximum conservation mode, it's about 50% would do it. This would keep your refrigerator running like normal. This would keep things. The other things that you could think about is, instead of using your stove for cooking, what if you had a barbecue grill and you were using the gas out of the barbecue grill and you had it for backup? You can also look at extending this in an emergency situation with a generator. A generator, one of the tests that I run every year is I plug my generator in and I completely run 2 full tanks of gas through it, and I do an oil change and all the maintenance. The important reason I do that is I want to understand how much power am I going to get from that gas on the generator that I have. In other words, if I need 105 kilowatts hours of energy to operate for autonomy, then that means that if I can get 1/3 of that from gas, then I can extend that to 4 days. If I can get it 105, now the question becomes is, how much does it cost me to get 105 hours of autonomy? Now, I just so happen to know I released a video on this, and I get about 30 kilowatts for a 5-gallon tank of gas. So if I had 15 gallons of gas in storage during hurricane season, then I could extend my autonomy to be twice the 3 days, up to 6 days. That's really good. Now that means I have to actually have 15 gallons of gas at the beginning of a hurricane. At the beginning of a hurricane, because I'm telling you, once the hurricane hits, everybody hits the roads and takes off out of town. There is no gas. There's nobody driving trucks into your area where the hurricane's coming. They're all leaving, and the trucks that carry the fuel are not coming in until the hurricane's over. And that's when you'll see gas again. So you need to make sure that you have a plan for it. My plan, very simple. Every year, I run a couple of tanks of gas to test my generator, to see how much power I'm generating, and preparatory for that year's that year's hurricane season. Burn off some of that gas that way. The rest of it all goes either into my wife's car, the lawnmower, or whatever it is, and then I replace it all with fresh gas. Now I have fresh gas until the next year. I know exactly how much power I can generate, and I know exactly how much gas I need for the autonomy for that particular year. I happen to carry 35 gallons of gas. So if I had 35 gallons of gas, which is 7 of these, I would have 7 times 30. I have another 210, and I've got 105 here, which gives me 9 days of autonomy operating under conservation mode, and it gives me 4.5 days operating on non-conservation mode. Now, it's very unlikely after a hurricane hits, in my experience, that there will be no sun following it. There may be no sun for a day or so following it, but usually after that, things clear up pretty quickly, and you start to get some good sunlight, and you can recover quite quickly. At that point, it's about infrastructure not being repaired to operate, not about the lack of sun. So in my case, having the hurricane preparatory there for the 9 days is really good. And that's how I cover it, by doing partial battery and partial power that way. Now, that's talking about battery bank and what you would need to do it. So it looks like I need 105 kilowatt hours of battery bank. I need 15.8 kilowatts of solar panels, and I need a 12,000 watt inverter to operate those. So let's talk about expansion. Expansion, for the most part, once you have the system in place, it's all about batteries. The batteries are the biggest bulk cost of your entire system. You pay for the panels and you get the pallet of panels, and let's just take a look real quick at like something like a Signature Solar, and we look at a pallet of panels, and there's links to all of this with a coupon code if you're interested in the solar panels new pallet, let's say. Comments, and I'll actually put the QR code up on the screen for a few seconds too, so you can get to it that way if you need to. So here we go, 460 panels, 36 in a pallet, $5,900. So that takes care of your panels, and they probably even have a kit, I would bet. This is where you start building your system, and now you have an idea of what inverter you need. You know how many panels you need. You know how many batteries you need. So let's go over to the kits and the bundles, and let's take. I was looking at an off-grid. You could go with a grid tied or a hybrid. I don't prefer the grid tied simply because when you lose your power, you lose your grid tied thing also because there's no battery. Hybrid is the preferred method. You get to use the grid, share power with the grid, but to be honest with you, I like the off-grid because I just like the control of being completely isolated from them, and it makes hooking them up a little easier. All right, so let's take a look at what do we have here. This is 12,000. It has solar panels, 20 kilowatts capacity solar panels, and 12,800 watts of solar panels, 20K of batteries. Not quite big enough, but let's go down and see if we can find I want to find the 12,000 because it has the new battery banks in them. And that's really what we're looking for, is 105 kilowatt hours of battery banks. So let's see here, we got the 12,000 XP, which is the one that we needed. That was part of the sizing. And then we have the battery bank here. Let's see if there's some bundle options. No, I was kind of surprised. I want one with off-grid solar kits, 6,000, 12,000 X, 12,000 watt split phase. This has got the two. Where is the... And this is where you start looking for kits and figuring out what you want. I don't like that battery option. I want the big rack battery like this. There we go, 12,000 XP with a full rack batteries. That'll be about 30 kilowatts. So you could easily start with something like this. It comes with 30 kilowatts of batteries. They even probably have it with, instead of the rack, you know, they probably have the, where is it? $18K PV hybrid inverter bundle with 61 kilowatts of lithium batteries. There we go. So this one is pretty much half of the way there, and I'll bet there's an option to upgrade this to have another battery bank, and we would be there. So this is the process that I'm talking about for building it. We walk through, just to kind of recap, we walk through taking how much power usage we had. We determined what was the maximum and the minimum usage that we were going to have for a particular month based on the sun hours we were going to have available for the best months and the worst months. Then we determined that we needed 15.8 kilowatts of solar panels. We looked at that and figured out that we needed about 12,000 watts of inverter power. And then from there, we talked about batteries and what I was safe with, which was 3 days of autonomy and having another 6 days through a generator. We needed 105 kilowatts of battery power. The nice thing about systems like this is that you're not locked into only building it the whole thing right now and sticking with that. You can get a 6000 XP and you can get one battery, and then you can add batteries at 5K a piece, or even different brands of batteries, and get some of the different ones and work your way to 105 kilowatt hours, and just use that to run your critical loads. And that way, if you did have an outage, at least you would still have refrigerators and freezers that you could keep running. You may not be able to run your air conditioner or your washer or dryer or your oven or anything like that during an outage, but at least you would be safe. Then as you decide to grow, you could add a second 6000 XP, which could get you to the 12,000 watts that you would need. And you could add enough battery banks to get up to the 105. And so these systems are extremely flexible for growth, allowing you to build from a very small system up to a very large system. Now, if you're going to start with the large system, then obviously you want to buy the biggest inverter you can, because as we said before, there is a cost to operating every piece of equipment in your system. In other words, if you have one inverter and it costs 50 watts to just sit there and idle and do nothing, that means if you have two sitting there and doing nothing, now it costs you 100 watts. So you're better off having one that uses 60 watts that's bigger, rather than two that use 50 watts a piece, even if they're smaller. Some people would argue that you have the ability to have backups that way, and they're absolutely right. So two 6000 XPs, and 6000 XPs, as you know, are my favorite inverter. I am really looking at those 12,000 XPs right now, though, because of their sell price on those at $1,700. It's just out of this world. I mean, it's a $700 drop, and that's just a fantastic deal. And I suspect that they'll probably be the best seller of this year if they maintain that price. Not to mention they're built in America, which is even more amazing, is that the prices are dropping and they're built in America, which is great. And from what I've seen of the 6000 XP and it being its big brother, the build quality is just fantastic. Anyway, I'm hoping this gets you to that next step, and I don't know how many of you stayed with me through all of that, but that is what we are doing, and that is how you size a system. I hope I answered all your questions. I want to see if I missed anything from anyone. I see here that I missed from hello from the Bahamas. McNair Newton from the Bahamas, welcome. I hope you're having a great day. And obviously we were doing solar system sizing today, so you in the Bahamas, that's going to be second nature to you. You're definitely going to need that. You get all the hurricanes down there, and the bad ones too, just like me here in Florida. If you don't get them, I get them usually. So hopefully we will both be in good shape this year and won't get them. Anyway, that is it for this week, unless there are some questions about it. I hope this has helped you guys size your solar system. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I do want to spend 1 minute here celebrating another major milestone from the channel of, look at that. Why is this thing doing that? Here we go. Of 20,425 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. It really means a lot to me that I continue to grow at an accelerated clip every day. I'm getting bigger and more people are here watching. Thank you so much for supporting me. Thank you for all of your likes. If you haven't liked this already, please do so. If you're not a subscriber, and only 33% of you are subscribers, so to the other 66%, you're missing tons of good videos. I have new content coming out every 3 to 4 days at this point, and probably will for all summer long. And if you can't wait for the content to come out, you can become a member for $2 a month. And it gives you early access to all the content that I have available. And right now, I think I have about a month and a half of extra content out there for you guys to watch. So join for only $2 a month if that's something you're interested in. but subscribe so you don't miss anything, because even the non-members, you won't miss anything as long as you're subscribed. We'll be here. I'm going to try to, I am traveling the next couple of weeks. I will try to live stream while I'm on the road. I cannot give you any promises yet. I don't know. I will be in Texas at the South Texas State Fair. I encourage all of you to come out and see me. We will be, my wife's coffee shop is Supervillain Coffee, and we will be there for the entire show. We're in one of the buildings, but honestly, I don't know the name of the building. I will post it or something and let you guys know, but I hope to see some of you in South Texas, and some of you Texans, and me being a native Texan myself, moved here to Florida back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 13 years ago? I don't know, a few years back. This is my home away from home. But anyway, hope that's good for all of you. And again, thank you guys for, I just can't get over the 20,425. Thank you so much for all of that. And we will see you next week at the same time, on the same channel, the same bat time, the same Matman channel, the same Matman time. Whatever, you get it. You guys have a good night. Thanks for watching.